Hey, this is Todd Fritzy from the Dan Patrick Show, and you're watching Picks with David.
It's the first weekend of the NFL season, and you're watching Picks with David. Hey, thanks for joining me. Today we've got 5 games here on the big first Sunday of the season, and we begin with our first game in Arizona. And of course, the big news in Kansas City is the fact that they traded away Tyreek Hill in the offseason. And they've replaced him with an array of different receivers that are younger and cheaper, starting with Juju Smith-Schuster of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then they move on to Marquez Valdez-Scantling of the Green Bay Packers, and they drafted Sky Moore. And so they're hoping to spread the ball around a little bit more rather than concentrate on an individual receiver. I know they get the ball a lot to Travis Kelce, but he feels like more of a safety valve in comparison to Tyreek Hill, who wanted the ball so much. Now, the Chiefs on defense drafted 2 first-round draft picks in George Karlaftis to bolster the defensive pass rush, and Trent McDuffie for the secondary to replace Charvarius Ward. Another player let go in this offseason was Tyrann Mathieu, who signed with the New Orleans Saints, and they bring over Justin Reed from the Houston Texans to take his position. So when you look at the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray got his big contract, but he's not going to have all of his weapons available to him here in this opening game of the year. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, suspended for the first several games of the season due to a violation of a test. And then Christian Kirk left and went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So in comes Marquise Brown from the Baltimore Ravens, Hollywood Brown, and they're good friends, and so you can expect him to make some big plays. With the absence of Hopkins, that means that A.J. Green, the old vet, will get some opportunities to make some plays as well. But as far as I'm concerned, Arizona, they always seem to do good in the beginning of the season, and then they fade down the stretch. But Kansas City is a team on a mission, and I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs in our first game of the season here on Sunday. Our second game is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles at the Detroit Lions. And the Eagles are all in this season in an attempt to see if Jalen Hurts is going to be their quarterback for the long term, or if this is just a shortcut here. And they brought in A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans. They have a good offensive line. They improved their defense this offseason, drafting Jordan Davis out of Georgia. And then they signed Hassan Reddick in free agency. And so I expect their defense to be improved. He's got an array of weapons around him, Jalen Hurts does. They've got a pretty stout running game that was dominant last year and helped them make the playoffs. Miles Sanders will be paired with Kenneth Gainwell, among others. But they're going to be facing the darlings of the offseason, Hard Knocks' Detroit Lions. And, Jared Goff, he's not going to have Jameson Williams to start the season. Of course, he's still recovering from his injury. And but he is going to he will have A couple of receivers that I think are underrated. Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then DJ Chark comes over from Jacksonville. They also have a very good tight end in TJ Hawkinson. If they can run the football with Swift and Williams, I think they've got themselves a really good offense. Defensively, they really bolstered this side of the field here, or the side of the ball. They're bringing in Aiden Hutchinson, basically almost like homegrown talent, played at Michigan. And then Malcolm Rodriguez, the sixth-round surprise, Rodrigo, and so for me, I'd like to pick the Detroit Lions in this particular game, but I just think that the Philadelphia Eagles have too much to prove, and so for that reason, I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles in this matchup. And so as we move on to our next matchup, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Pittsburgh, for the first time in many a year, will not have Big Ben starting at quarterback. They go out in the offseason and they bring in Mitchell Trubisky, former first-round draft pick of the Chicago Bears, who is a playoff quarterback who has some proven abilities. I just don't think he had any help in Chicago. But he's got an array of weapons in Pittsburgh. They also drafted first-round draft choice Kenny Pickett. But they've got Deontay Johnson, they've got Chase Claypool, and now newcomer George Pickens. But, it remains to be seen if their offensive line has been improved at all. I expect them to lean on their running game, especially early in the season. I think it's going to be a big year for Najee Harris. On the other side, you've got the Cincinnati Bengals coming off a Super Bowl loss, and their one weakness in that game was the offensive line, which they went right out in free agency and bolstered that thing big time. I think their offensive line is really going to be much improved. They still got big play receivers all over the field, and Higgins and Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow can get the ball down the field to his receivers and make those big plays. They lost C.J. Uzomah to the New York Jets after an injury during the season, and he'll be replaced by Hayden Hurst coming in at tight end. And so, I think that all cylinders are going to be firing. Their defense was pretty good last year. I want to take the Steelers in this game because I think that they have a lot going for them, but I just can't pick against the defending AFC champs. I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals in this particular game. And so then we'll move on to our next game, which is going to be the Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings. And so, for me, I am a big Viking fan, and so I know a lot about what's going on there with the team. And one of the things that I can tell you is that if you've got a head coach who doesn't believe in your quarterback and is relatively conservative, you're not going to do well in the playoffs. You don't inspire confidence in your team. Well, confidence has come to town in the form of Kevin O'Connell and his new coaching staff. Now, O'Connell is going to run the McVay, Kyle Shanahan offense, which he learned, which Kirk Cousins used, when he was a member of the Washington Redskins. So they're very familiar with each other. They're on good terms, and I think that that's going to help this Viking offense really break out. Of course, they've got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne started to come on last year. They've got a really good running game in Dalvin Cook and probably one of the better backups in Alexander Madison. And then on defense, they bring in Zadarius Smith, after jettisoning Anthony Barr earlier in the offseason. I think that overall this team is going to be much improved. And then, of course, they're going to be playing here against the Packers, who traded away Devontae Adams because they just didn't feel like that they could pay him what he was asking. And so because of that, they're kind of like the Chiefs. They brought in a whole nother array of wide receivers for their team. starting with Sammy Watkins and then a couple of draft picks in Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. And so both of those players, have shown some sparks in the preseason and in training camp. But I think that it'll take a little bit for the Packers offense to get on track because of the newness of some of their players. And because the Vikings have all of this, I'll call it upstart spirit, I think the Vikings are going to win this game today there at US Bank Field. Finally, Sunday Night Football on NBC, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And, I feel the same way about both of these teams. I think both teams have kind of taken, a step back. Of course, Dallas traded away Amari Cooper, and so they're a little thin at wide receiver. They've got James Washington, who they brought in from the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he's been hurt. Michael Gallup is recovering from an injury from last year. CeeDee Lamb is going to be the number one receiver. But, I don't really know who else is going to be, as far as the weapons. They do have Dalton Schultz at tight end. But, when it comes to the receiving core, I just think that they've taken a big step back. And then, their offensive line, which has been one of the best in the league for several years, has been decimated with injuries and retirements over the last couple of seasons. And this year is no different. They drafted Tyler Smith. I thought he was going to play left tackle and replace Tyron Smith because of his injury, but they just signed Jason Peters, the former Philadelphia Eagle, to come in, and he played for the Bears last year, but, that'll help provide some protection for Dak Prescott. When it comes to protection, the Buccaneers are in trouble, They lost their center and one of their guards to injury in the preseason. One of their other guards retired. And so I think the pass rush of the Cowboys can get to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady's going to have to throw a lot of short and intermediate passes to get the ball out of his hand in an effort to avoid getting into trouble with the pressure. And, of course, that's the big story for Dallas last year, is how much more improved their defense was. They brought in Micah Parsons, and of course Trevon Diggs was already there, but he really became a star last year with a lot of interceptions. They've added Anthony Barr here this season, and so I think their defense is going to be pretty good under defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. But Tampa Bay has a great defense as well. And, when it comes to weapons, on offense for Tampa Bay, they just keep adding more older veterans. You got Kyle Rudolph at tight end, Julio Jones at wide receiver. But I just think that when it comes to this matchup here, last year Tampa Bay won in a close one, but I don't think Dallas is nearly as good as they were last year. I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win on Sunday Night Football. And that's going to bring us to our Spotlight Players of the Weekend. A couple of quarterbacks here. Jalen Hurts, who we discussed earlier, they put all the marbles on the table here for the Philadelphia Eagles. They brought in A.J. Brown. They've got a good offensive line. They've got the dominant running game. It's an opportunity here for Jalen to prove that he is the quarterback of this team for the long haul going forward. And so I expect him to make some big plays in the game against Detroit, use his mobility to run the football, and, get the ball down the field to his array of weapons. The other player, Mitchell Trubisky, of course, with Pittsburgh. I almost took Pittsburgh in the game here today, but I just feel like I didn't have the gall to pick against Cincinnati in week one coming off of the Super Bowl. But, as we mentioned before, Trubisky, he didn't get a whole lot of help in Chicago, but he is a playoff caliber quarterback, a first-round draft pick quarterback. And so here he's got lots of weapons in Pittsburgh. And so I think that if they lean on the running game with Najee Harris, they've got a great defense in Pittsburgh. I think Mitchell Trubisky can make some big plays. and maybe put up some big fantasy stats for some of you folks out there. So there you have it. There's your picks with David for week 1 of the 2022 NFL season. I'm really excited for today's array of games all over the NFL. If you're lucky enough to get the free DirecTV Sunday ticket like I am, I'll be moving all over the channels to check it all out. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like watching me make my picks, be sure to subscribe. Please like the video, and you'll be able to not miss anything here on YouTube. I'll also be posting some videos on Facebook. And so thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next time right here on Picks with David.